So after all this time, they think they might finally know who the fucking Zodiac killer is, and it's not Ted Cruz, funnily enough. Gary Poste, who was the alleged Zodiac killer, identified by case breakers? Question mark. Yeah, you need to slap that on the end. So they aren't making any direct claims. Was a U.S. Air Force veteran and house painter, the Zodiac killer, and like you've heard the story of the Zodiac. But before we get into the video, it is in fact your boy Richard Legend. With millions of champion combinations and countless tactics to master, there is no end to the different ways that you can fight raid bosses, do dungeon runs, battle in the campaign, or compete in the PvP arena. With hundreds of artifacts to buff up your boys and over 500 champions with unique skills, you can fight your battles the way that you want. Use my link in the description down below to download Raid for free on your phone or PC. There are two kinds of elves in Teleria. They used to be the same, but about 700 years ago, Siroth tempted some of them away from the light. Not with evil, he tempted them with art and philosophy. When the Arbiter found out that they had been tempted by Siroth, she got really worried about Siroth's influence and begged the elves to stop. Some did, but others doubled down, and that is where the dark cult stuff started to grow. There have been attempts to fix the relationship between the High Elves and the Dark Elves, but they are 700 years apart, and they are not going to be getting along anytime soon. And one of my favourite champions right now is Rule the Huntmaster. He is incredibly strong and has a Hex debuff that causes huge amounts of damage. He is good solo or as part of a team, and everyone wants a massive damage dealer with the capability of destroying waves of enemies in any game mode. And this month, Raid's got a non-stop schedule of special events and activities, including a full Halloween lineup towards the end of the month. So that means big rewards, tournaments against other players, special fragment events to get some brand new legendary champions, including a Halloween champion, and much more. So if you want a starting boost in Raid Shadow Legends, then hit the link below or scan the QR code on the screen to get 200,000 silver, an XP booster, an energy refill, an ancient shard, and the epic champion Chonoru, so you can summon a great champion as soon as you get into the game. These rewards are only available to new players and only for the next 30 days, and you can find these rewards here in your inbox. Gary Francis Poste was identified by volunteer investigative group The Case Breakers as a potential new suspect in the hunt for the Zodiac killer, the serial killer who terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 1960s. Because of the cryptic letters and ciphers the killer sent to authorities and the San Francisco Chronicle at the time, the case has long fascinated true crime aficionados and has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, TV shows, and movies. Most famous, the David Fincher directed dramatization starring Robert Downey Jr. and Jake Gyllenhaal. The case, apparently that's how you actually say it. The case breakers reportedly identified Mr. Poste, who died in 2018. Fucking saw a lot of good that did, but through a series of photographs that they uncovered dating back to 1963, supposedly from his dark room, according to a press release issued by the group. They found photos that showed Mr. Poste with supposed scars on his forehead that they believe match the marks shown on a police sketch of the Zodiac killer. A news clipping sourced by the group indicates that they believe the scars were the result of a car crash in 1959 in which an airman was killed, and Mr. Poste, also with the 782nd Aircraft Control and Warning Squadron, was injured. The group, which focuses on cold cases and consists of former law enforcement and forensic specialists, also claims to have forensic evidence including DNA, and further says that if you remove the letters of Mr. Poste's full name from the ciphers left by the Zodiac, it reveals an alternate message. Much of the Casebreakers' reported evidence centres on linking Mr. Poste to a murder in Riverside, California that was connected to the Zodiac in the mid-70s, but is now no longer considered by authorities to be connected. The brutal slaying of Cherry Joe Bates on the 31st of October 1966 occurred 2 years before the Zodiac is known to have been active hundreds of miles to the north, though in one of the Zodiac's letters he claims to have killed 37 people, far more than the 5 officially attributed to him. But a lot of serial killers, they do that. Among the evidence that the case breakers believe links the cases and Mr. Poste is a Timex wristwatch with a broken band found at the crime scene and purchased at a military base in the mid-60s. Okay, that's a bit convincing. Mr. Post was receiving medical checkups following a gun accident injury, the casebreakers say, and as a US Air Force veteran, was being treated at March Air Force Base Hospital just 15 minutes from the crime scene, but it is unclear if the dates overlap. Pardon. The casebreakers believe that paint spattered on the wristwatch's face is because at the time of the murder, Mr. Post had been a house painter for 3 years and continued to be for decades afterwards. A size 10 heel print from a military-style boot is also believed to be in the style of those allegedly worn by Mr. Post, and they say the same as those found at 3 other Zodiac crime scenes. Brown hair found in the victim's hand is also said to match that of Mr. Post. Fox News spoke with a Vietnam veteran, Ham Smits, who says he spent 10 years hiding a Zodiac whistleblower named Will, who had escaped a criminal posse headed by Mr. Post that allegedly roamed around in California's High Sierra region. Will, who now lives in the Northwest, alleges Mr. Post groomed me into a killing machine and that he witnessed him burying murder weapons. In an extract from a longer interview with the casebreakers, Will claims that Mr. Post killed animals of all sizes indiscriminately and would mess with the carcasses. Other witnesses brought forward by the casebreakers include Mr. Post's daughter-in-law, a woman named Michelle, who claims that when her marriage ended, she was harassed, threatened and assaulted by Mr. Post's posse until she left the state. Gwenny, a California woman who lived next door to Mr. Post and his wife, told Fox News she believes he's the Zodiac killer based on the evidence collected to date. I don't know what she added to the situation there, but whatever. She said Mr. Post and his wife babysat her as a child in the 1970s and 1980s, and he would teach her how to shoot firearms several times a week. She also said that she witnessed his callousness and violence towards his wife, who only slept on the couch. Oh dear. Recently, Gwenny said she caught up with his wife, who is now in assisted living, and was told over the phone, "I'm sorry that I didn't tell the cops about his Zodiac past." The casebreakers report in their press release, adding their parentheses. He lived a double life, she told Fox News. As an adult, thinking back, it all kind of makes sense now. At the time when I was a teenager, I didn't put the two and two together until I got older. It hit me full-blown that Gary's the Zodiac. To date, no DNA has been matched to any of the Zodiac crime scenes, nor to evidence retained from the death of Miss Bates. In 2020, after private citizens cracked one of the ciphers, the FBI said the Zodiac case was ongoing, and one of the things that was quite impressive was he made some really complicated ciphers to the point where people thought this is just complete gobbledygook that this guy is made up. But no, it turns out that they are valid ciphers, and apparently his name, his real name contributed to one of the ciphers, but I believe he actually says that in the letter. But if it turns out they managed to get some DNA evidence on the guy, it would be quite cool to put it to bed. I kind of want to know how the guy died, because you would think that would definitely be a deathbed confession. So I'm thinking that maybe his death was sudden, like he just had a heart attack and dropped one day or something like that, or maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But if it was a long, slow death that he knew was coming, he's lying in a hospital bed. That's definitely something that you say on your deathbed. That's definitely something you just roll over to your family and go, "I love you all very much. This life has been a magical journey, and I've enjoyed traveling on it with you. But I'm afraid you're going to have to go for the rest of the distance without me. By the way, I'm the Zodiac." Right. Oh, at least that's the way I would have done it. Right, but maybe it is. It would be nice to finally find out who the hell the Zodiac is, because that's one of the it's. The Zodiac probably is the most famous cold case. I would say it is. It is the most famous cold case. It got to the point where even fucking Ted Cruz was called the Zodiac, and people were trying to say it was him, and it was funny because he embraced the meme and he had a laugh along with it, and he even posts Zodiac memes himself. But cold cases like that are interesting. One of the ones that I really enjoyed is there is a Korean movie, which I'm always recommending Korean movies because they're brilliant, and it's called Memories of Murder, and it was about a murderer, a prolific serial killer who only murdered in the rain and only murdered when a certain song was played on the radio. And this was back when South Korea was under essentially a dictatorship. I know everyone thinks, oh, North Korean dictatorship. You don't. A lot of people don't know that South Korea itself was under a dictator, and people were brought into rooms and beaten for confessions. Whether they liked it or not. Pretty Stalin stuff. And they had a suspect, and that suspect was released because despite everything they did to him, they couldn't get him to admit to anything. And then apparently the movie came out a good few years ago, but it's an excellent movie. I'd recommend you watch it. And apparently, like just 3 years ago, the killer turned up and handed himself in, and they knew it was him because he was talking about stuff that only the killer would have known. And apparently they found a bunch of shit in his house and all that as well. But apparently, because of the way statute of limitation laws work in South Korea, he can't be charged with any of the murders because they were that long ago. I don't know about that. I'll need to double check that. I'll need to look into that to make sure that's correct. But yeah, I mean, I would Google that. I might be misremembering that. The killer did definitely come forward and they found it was him. But what's happening with it? Google it and find out. But if this finally brings a bit of closure to the Zodiac and they get DNA analysis and stuff like that, then that'd be pretty cool. The world's most famous cold case actually getting solved. But until then, I'm not gonna. Oh, we found the Zodiac killer, right? Okay, then a lot of the stuff you've got is circumstantial, but I would like to see a little bit more. But I hope it is him, and all of this can finally be put to bed.